Welcome to the Federal Retirement Podcast. My name is David Rates from Benchmark Financial Group, and every month we discuss important topics regarding the retirement planning process for federal employees. This Lunch and Learn series is an interactive discussion where individuals can ask questions. To join these discussions live, you can register by joining our email list at BFGKC.com. Additionally, if you're looking for assistance to get your retirement on the right track, set up an appointment with us today. You can schedule an appointment online by visiting our website, bfgkc.com, or email me directly at david.rates@bfgkc.com. The contact information is also listed in the description. By setting up a complimentary consultation, we can review your financial situation and develop a plan to meet your financial goals. We hope you enjoy this topic and hope to connect with you soon.
Welcome to Benchmark's Lunch and Learn. My name is Patty Riley. I assist Gary and David Rates. Today, our topic is challenges of federal paperwork. We do welcome questions. Feel free to type them in the chat box or unmute and ask. With that, I will turn it over to Gary.
Well, hi, my name is Gary Rates. I'm the founder of Benchmark Financial Group, LLC. My job today is to introduce our program and our speaker, David Rates. David is president of Benchmark Financial Group, LLC, and in that position, he's developed substantial skills and knowledge in working with federal employees, helping them to understand the benefits and make sure you take advantage of all the benefits that are owed to you. You can have the best benefit plan, but if you don't understand all the options, you leave things on the table. Today, he's speaking on one specific topic, that is the retirement plan paperwork to actually retire. You need to complete this in order to retire successfully. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David.
All righty. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And like we all said a second ago, the theme of this month's Zoom call is challenges of federal paperwork, and more specifically, the retirement paperwork. So this slide is our disclaimer that we have on everything. In a nutshell, it's just saying that we're trying to be as accurate as possible with the information that we're presenting to you guys. So that's it for the most part there. So federal retirement forms. All righty. So when it comes to federal retirement, there's just a handful of main forms that you want to be aware of. There's some others that get added into the mix, but primarily these are the base ones that you want to go off of. So a lot of folks these days tend to be FERS employees. So the big, I guess, retirement application, so to speak, that one is called SF-3107. It's the FERS application for immediate retirement. There's a handful of folks that are still CSRS employees that are still working for the federal government. So if you're one of those rare birds, the standard base retirement application package for a CSRS employee is SF-2801. So that would be CSRS application for immediate retirement. The second main one, so if you have any FEGLI life insurance, and you're at the point of retirement, there's going to be a decision that needs to be made. And in a nutshell, you have to decide whether or not you want to keep all of your FEGLI, half of it, or a quarter of it. So there's a separate form outside of SF-3107 that you fill out, which instructs OPM and HR what you want to do with your federal group life insurance coverage. I would say 9 times out of 10, people hang on to basic, and if they have option A, they hang on to that piece and take what they call a 75% reduction. But in order to do that, you have to fill out this specific form that instructs everyone that's involved in the whole retirement process what exactly you want to do with that FEGLI piece of things. And then the last main retirement form that gets added to the stack are W-4P forms. So there's a W-4P for the federal tax withholding on your pension, and then if you live, it just depends on the state that you live in, because each state has different unique laws for taxation of benefits for retirees. So like in the state of Kansas, if you're a resident, you don't have to worry about them charging you state income tax on your FERS or CSRS pension. But if you live in Missouri, depending on how much gross income you have as a retiree, there's a chance that you could be charged state income tax in Missouri. So oftentimes for Missouri residents, we fill out IRS W-4P form and then the state of Missouri W-4P form, which just instructs how much federal withholding you want first pension and how much state tax withholding you want on that piece of things too. So, and then right at the bottom, that's the link to Missouri's W4P forms. All righty. This is just a snapshot of what SF 3107, the main starting page of it looks like. It's always good to have a reference point for all these forms. So thought it'd be useful to just throw this into the mix. So this is, like I said, this is the main starting page for a FERS application for immediate retirement. The CSRS page looks pretty similar, but it's not exactly the same. But like we said a second ago, if you're one of those rare birds, it's still a CSRS employee looking to retire. This would be a snapshot of the main starting page for your application for immediate retirement. All righty. So for the like I said a second ago, for FERS employees, the application for immediate retirement or FERS transfer employees, which there aren't a lot of those, but like we said, that main form is SF 3107, CSRS offset employees. You fill out the SF 2801, and if you want to leave surviving spouse benefit, so depending on how long you've been married, most of the time people are in a spot where the standard default option that they have for a surviving spouse benefit is 50%. And depending on the duration of time that you've been married, your spouse is legally entitled to that 50% survivor benefit. So if it makes sense for you to leave a lesser amount, you have to get a notarized form signed. So it's in the back of the SF 3107 or the SF 2801. But you have to go to the effort to have your spouse sign off that they're acknowledging the fact that they recognize that they're getting less than the 50% or maximum surviving spouse benefit on the FERS pension. And then in addition to that, if you have a divorce, so it's not so much the wording that you have a divorce decree. It's if you have a divorce decree with a court order that requires you to pay a portion of your FERS or CSR's pension to a former spouse, that's when it comes into the mix. So sometimes the wording of that can be a little confusing because people just have a divorce and, it was a clean split. Then you don't necessarily need to worry about letting OPM or HR know about that when it comes to filling out retirement paperwork. So that's an important piece of the pie. But if you are in that zone where you have a divorce and there's a requirement for you to pay a portion of that, there's a whole process that takes place where you spell out what that actually means in dollars and cents. So something to keep in mind. In addition to those pieces, you want to have some documentation, which shouldn't be difficult for most folks. Just the fact that your service computation date is what it is documentation that you've had 5 years of coverage under FEHB program in order to maintain health insurance coverage throughout retirement. So if you, I guess a real world example, we had a client who was retiring as an air traffic controller facing a mandatory retirement date, and he had to file an extension to get his mandatory retirement date pushed back a few years because he was on his wife's health insurance, and they needed to get 5 years in before he retired so that she could continue with FEHB if she was a survivor. So that one, like I said, that's just a real world example of some things that happen from time to time. It's easy one to slip through the cracks, but it's an important benefit because FEHB is one of the most valuable retirement benefits that you have. Like if you have a spouse and that spouse is a survivor, Uncle Sam treats that spouse as pretty much like an active employee throughout the remainder of their lives. So they continue to subsidize the health insurance premium to the tune of about 70% of the total cost, which is a big deal going forward in retirement. Bullet point number 5. So you want to have documentation of 5 years of coverage under the federal employee group life insurance. So that one should be pretty easy to do just because most people elect those options when they hire on, and it's pretty easy to reduce FEGLI. It's just there's only been a handful of open seasons where you could add FEGLI coverage as an active employee. So number 5 should be pretty straightforward. FEGLI life insurance selection form, like we said, that's that separate form where you instruct OPM and HR what exactly you want to do with your life insurance as a retiree. And 9 times out of 10, people hang on. If they're hanging on to FEGLI in retirement, they're hanging on to basic. And if they have option A, which is just a flat $10,000, it's not necessarily breaking the bank in terms of the premiums, but there's only a handful of ways to set it so that you don't see just the snowballing effect with your life insurance premium. So 9 times out of 10, people hang on to basic and option A, and they take what's called a 75% reduction. But for bullet point number 6, you have to fill out that SF2818 form in a certain way, which just spells out exactly what you want to do with that. And then documentation of creditable civilian service that provides evidence of an employee's service. So for bullet point number 7, that would be situations like military time would be the main one there, where if you have a chunk of time that you paid a deposit for and you're getting credit for it for your federal service, you definitely want to keep the receipts, provide those with your retirement application. And I mean, even if they've credited it towards your service computation date, it's a smart idea just to provide the receipts for them. It just reduces the margin for error that might take place. So, all righty, this one is a snapshot of the SF2818 form, which is that FEGLI continuation of life insurance coverage as a retiree or FERS annuitant. So, like we said, with all these forms, it's always good to have a reference point. So forms needed for complete retirement application. So like going back to bullet point number 7, documentation of military service, if applicable, is a big one. You definitely don't want to wait till like 0 hour to get military time sorted out, because obviously it's like turning an aircraft carrier. The process of turning it can be a bit frustrating just because of all the different entities that you have to deal with. And sometimes it's an exercise in being politely annoying, but yeah, that's definitely a bullet point that you want to check off the list before submitting any sort of retirement paperwork, and make sure that you have all the identifying information and documentation with that piece of things. So updated beneficiary forms or beneficiary designation forms. So the main ones would be CSRS, so form SF2808, and FERS form SF3102. These would be beneficiary forms where you're actively employed. So this would be for your final paycheck and your leave payment. In addition to that, if you get to the point, or if tragically, if you pass away as an active employee, and you don't have a surviving spouse, then there's going to be beneficiary forms for your contributions that you paid into the FERS pension system or CSRS pension system. So, hopefully that's a rare situation, obviously, but in the event that it does happen, you just want to make sure that you have that piece of things taken care of, so you don't really have to worry about it. But yeah, it's an easy one to forget about, but each biweekly paycheck, you're putting money into the FERS or CSRS pension system. And if you, like I said, if you don't have a surviving spouse, then there's going to be a return of that money that you paid in to somebody. So FEGLI, that would be the federal group life insurance. That's SF2823. And then TSP3, which is a beneficiary designation on your thrift savings plan. Bullet point number 10 applies to just CSRS folks, and that would be for a voluntary contribution program. The VCP is a pretty rare one these days. It was the precursor to TSP, and it's an after-tax retirement savings vehicle, but those ones don't crop up very much these days. So like we were saying a second ago, important beneficiary forms. So unpaid compensation of a deceased employee, that'd be your final paycheck and your leave time. So that's SF1152, SF1152. SF2823 is federal employees group life insurance. That instructs everyone what you want to do with that life insurance piece of things. And SF3102 would be the FERS designation of beneficiary, or that beneficiary form for your FERS retirement contributions if, God forbid, you pass away and you don't have a surviving spouse to leave that pension to. And then SF2808 would be the CSRS designation of beneficiary. And then, like we said a second ago, TSP3 would be the designation of beneficiary for your thrift savings plan. And you definitely want to be particular about how these forms are filled out, because over the years we've had a few of them get bounced back just because they're very particular about the wording of things. So it's just a matter of making sure that you dot all the I's and cross all the T's in the right spot and submit the information the way that it's supposed to be submitted. So this one would be a snapshot of what SF 1152 looks like, or that unpaid compensation of a deceased employee. This one is the snapshot of that FEGLI continuation of life insurance form. So SF 2823 would be the beneficiary designation on the federal employee group life insurance piece of things. This one is the one where they're kind of a stickler about how it's worded. So it's just a matter of making sure that it's filled out and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in the right spot. And then you have to have a couple witnesses on that one too. So all righty, CSRS designation and beneficiary form. It's just like that first page, but it's for CSRS folks. So if you don't have a surviving spouse and you pass away as an active employee, there's a return of money that you paid into the CSRS pension system. So 3102, and then TSP3 would be the designation of beneficiary form. So TSP's gone electronic with pretty much a lot of the paperwork these days. So should be able to update that one on TSP's website pretty easily. So that's one of the changes that took place. I want to say last year when they did a major overhaul of TSP's website. So, all righty, this would be a snapshot of a W-4P form. So it's important to remember, like we were saying at the beginning of the call, that you have federal tax withholding, and then depending on the state that you're in, you have there's potential for state tax withholding on your pension, your FERS or SERS pension. So you just want to have that piece of things ironed out so you know what you're working with, or the cards that you're working with, so to speak. And then this is a snapshot of Missouri W-4P form. So depending on what your total adjusted gross income is, most folks are in a spot where they got to pay a little bit for state taxes if they on the first pension if they live in Missouri. So you just, again, you want to know what's coming down the pipe with that piece of thing. So, all right. So how do I get started? With us, it's always multi-step process. So our first meeting is what we call a fact-finding meeting, where we identify and gather all the documents needed to develop a retirement plan. And if this piece of things comes up in conversation, which oftentimes it does, usually the second and third meeting. So subsequent meeting, we present you with a preliminary retirement plan, which we call version 1. And oftentimes that'll morph into version 1, 2, or 3, just depending on what you want to do with each piece of the pie. And so sometimes it's a matter of knowing what your options are and then make an informed decision. So it's not uncommon for version 1 to morph into version 2, 3, or 4, just depending on how much refining people want to have done. So, and then subsequent meetings, we put together an income strategy. We put that into place, open up new accounts, and manage funds on an ongoing basis and make adjustments as needed going on throughout the retirement process. So it's not just getting to retirement and then the people we're working with, we never talk to them again. It's an ongoing relationship from retirement on forward. And then we make adjustments to things as life happens. So what items do I need for the first meeting? All righty. So the big one would be a copy of a leave and just a recent pay stub or a recent leave and earnings statement. Is always a helpful piece of information to have, because we like to put together a net to net income comparison. So we always like to run what's your net income that you're used to living on monthly now as an active employee relative to what's the net monthly income going to be as a retiree based off of all the information that we have from today. So that's an important piece of the pie. Any sort of retirement estimates that you've gotten from HR, Employee Express, MyPay, GRB platform, any of those are useful pieces of information to have. So if you haven't had HR run any retirement estimates for you, sometimes the turnaround time on that can be, depending on whether or not you have an HR person that you have contact to. They can take a little longer than ideal to have them run those, but that might be a reason why to just get the process going to see what the numbers come back looking like. So it's not it's not a rare situation for people to find just quirky things that crop up with a service computation date or something like that they want to get ironed out prior to heading down the road of a formal retirement. So bullet point number 3, just a recent copy of a TSP statement so we can get an idea of how your funds are invested, which TSP funds you're using for your balance and your contributions, and then just a general idea of approximate balance. So, and then additional items you'll need to bring for meeting, any other investment accounts that you'd like to have included in the plan. So those would be like outside IRAs, old 401ks, just accounts that are earmarked for retirement income that you want to add into the equation too. And then any sort of outside life insurance policies or long-term care insurance policies that you have in force now. It's always good to know coverage amounts, duration, if it's a term policy, how far into the term you are relative to how long it's set to cover you for, and then premiums as well. So you always want to know those pieces of things. So statement from Social Security is always a good one to have, if you can get your hands on that piece of things. Divorce decree, if you're in that spot, it's always important to just double check that to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what the divorce decree says, and that there aren't any curveballs that you're going to run into right at the door of retiring from the federal government. So, and then if you have a spouse that has benefits that you like to have included into the mix, that's always important to gather info on their plan as well. So that would be the last one, number 8 right there. How about any questions?
There are none at this time in the chat box. We do invite you to go to our website, BFGKC.com, and check out our event page to see our upcoming seminars and lunch and learns. David, do you have anything else?
Like I said, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And if you think of anything after the call that you've been kicking around, don't hesitate to, you can always give me a call, shoot me an email, or just go to our website and drop a comment in on the website, and we'll go from there. So hope to see you guys in the future. And like you said, thanks for tuning in.